Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to offer you a few reflections on the readings of this 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. I usually do a reflection on the Gospel, but the first reading in this Sunday's Mass is so wonderful. It's that story from the book of Kings when Solomon is asleep at night and God comes to him in his dreams. And God says to him, "Ask of me anything, and I will give it to you." And Solomon says in response, "O Lord my God, you have made me your servant king, but I am a mere youth, not knowing how to act. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding heart." And God was pleased to hear that Solomon made this request and said to him, "Because you have asked for this, not for long life for yourself, nor for riches, but for understanding, I will do as you requested." So let's play pretend for a moment. We go to sleep tonight, and in our dreams, God comes to us and says, "I will do for you whatever you request." What would we ask for? And now remember, we can't ask for things like world peace or end of hunger or things like that, because what God is saying, what is it that you want more than anything else in this world? What would we say? Well, like Solomon, who wouldn't be tempted to say, riches or good health? And there's nothing wrong with either one. We can do all kinds of good things with riches. And who wants to suffer? Who wouldn't want good health? So, what would we ask for? Well, Solomon passed up all of those understandable requests and asked for an understanding heart. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's in our dreams if God came to us tonight, what we would ask for. God, give me a more understanding heart. And what would I do with that more understanding heart? Well, if I had such a heart, I'd be able to understand myself better. And I might then be able to understand better why it is that in some parts of my life I'm struggling so much and the difficulties that come to me because of those struggles. And maybe I'd understand better within myself what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and I'd avoid the mistakes that I've made before that come from my weaknesses and from my strengths sometimes. If I had a more understanding heart, not just would I understand myself better, but I'd understand this world around me better. I'd understand people around me, family and friends and others. And with that more understanding heart, I'd be a lot more considerate and I'd be a lot more patient because I'd be able to start seeing what God sees. Because I would understand them better, I would realize why they do hurtful things to others or to me and why they behave the way they do. And I would be more sympathetic and more forgiving. And I would understand what Jesus said when commenting on the people around him that hurt him deeply. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He said that on the cross. He had that kind of understanding heart. And when else he said, they have eyes but see not, ears but hear not. They're blind. They just don't see. And if I had a more understanding heart, I would realize that too, that people, I think, commit sin and hurt one another because they're blind. If they really saw what they were doing, they couldn't bring themselves to do it, but they don't see. They're blind. And, it's like a blind man that bumps into the furniture. What do we do? Blame him? No, he's blind. And these people around us that can do hurtful things, I would understand them. And I'd be a lot more patient and forgiving. And if I had a more understanding heart, I would seek to understand God better and to understand my relationship with Him more deeply. And if I understood God more deeply, I would begin to see Him all around me in this world and within me. And I would see Him at work in this world around me. And seeing that would make me want to be part of that work in this world of God. In the Gospel of Matthew, we hear Jesus say, proclaim the kingdom of heaven, or the reign of God is at hand. And when we hear those things, we are tempted to think of how we understand heaven to be that place we go after this life. And that part is true, but that's not what Matthew was trying to say. For Matthew, when he says the reign of God or the kingdom of God, he's referring to the here and now, God's saving activity that is taking place in this present moment. And if I were to have a more understanding heart, then I would see God's saving activity all around me in this world. And I'd want to be part of that. I'd want to be an instrument through which God's saving activity would come into this world and transform this world. If I had a more understanding heart, that's the kingdom of heaven that I would be proclaiming. Let's just play pretend one more time. Imagine if 12 of us were to go to sleep tonight and God come to us in our dream and offer us anything, and all 12 asked for a more understanding heart. Imagine waking up that next morning, what a change we would make within ourselves, within the world around us. Just like the 12 apostles who one day woke up with a more understanding heart, and they transformed the world they lived in. But now, let's really play pretend. There's 1.2 billion Catholics in the world. Let's just imagine that all 1.2 billion of us would go to bed at night, and we would have God come to us and say, ask me for anything, and all 1.2 billion would ask for an understanding heart. Imagine waking up the next morning, how the world would be changed, because now 1.2 billion people are more discerning than they were before, more considerate than they were before, more generous than they were before. Imagine how that would change the world overnight. And then in no time, we wouldn't be having world poverty. We wouldn't have hunger. We wouldn't have war, because the 1.2 billion people have begun to transform this world by being instruments of God's saving activity. A more understanding heart. Well, a more understanding heart wouldn't make me like God, but it might make me very much like the man in the gospel who loved pearls. And when he found one truly valuable pearl, he sold all that he had just to have that one, because he loved pearls. And perhaps for us, the one really valuable pearl is an understanding heart that I would want, because it would change me, change my life, change the lives of others, change this world. And I pray that I would pray for that one really valuable